The NSA specifically targets the communications of everyone. It ingests them by default.
The United States is not spying on ordinary people who don't threaten our national security.
I'm just another guy who sits there day to day in the office, watches what's happening, and goes, this is something that's not our place to decide. The public needs to decide whether these programs and policies are right or wrong.
It's entirely appropriate for a program to exist to look at foreign data.
You can't come forward against the world's most powerful intelligence agencies and be completely free from risk, because they're such powerful adversaries that no one can meaningfully oppose them. If they want to get you, they'll get you in time.
You might have bought the phone, but whoever hacked it, they're the one who owns it. Any device that's on here, you can operate independently.
So it's true you can get into the phone and turn the camera on?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there a way you can tell if your phone's been hacked?
Perhaps the most terrifying thing is, if your phone had been hacked, you would never know.
Now, Edward Snowden remains a polarizing figure in American politics, because on one side, he's considered a hero on the level of Woodward and Bernstein, who broke the Watergate scandal, but on the other, he's considered a traitor who jeopardized American intelligence and security around the world.
A traitor to the United States.
These records were spread about publicly by Edward Snowden intentionally, recklessly, and I might say illegally.
So NSA, CIA, FBI, can they get into my phone?
Yes.
Can they get into my laptop?
Absolutely.
iPad?
Anything, as long as they can dedicate people, money, and time to the target, they can get in.
And what kind of information can they get from my phone?
Everything in your contacts list, every SMS message that you use, every place that's ever been, where the phone is physically located, even if you've got GPS disabled because they can see which wireless access points are near you. Every part of a private life today is found on someone's phone. We used to say a man's home is his castle. Today, a man's phone is his castle.
My question to you is, why don't more people care?
Part of it is the fact that it happened invisibly. If a politician had said, we want to watch everybody in the country, people would have been up in arms about it. In the wake of September 11th, the Vice President of the United States, Dick Cheney, and his personal lawyer, David Addington, conspired with a number of top-level officials in the NSA and other agencies to change not only what they considered to be the legal restraints, but actually the culture of surveillance in the intelligence community. They moved from the exceptional surveillance to the surveillance of everyone. Technology has changed. Instead of sending people to follow you, we use the devices that you paid for, the services and the systems that surround you invisibly every day, to watch you on our behalf. Metadata is the fact that a communication occurred.
So I called you.
You called me, when you called me, where you called me. This information is the same thing that's produced when a private investigator follows you. They can't sit close enough to you in every cafe to hear every word you're saying, but they can be close enough to know when you left your house, the license plate of the car you were driving, where you went, who you sat with, how long you were there, when you left, where you went after that. That's metadata. Every phone has what's called an IMSI, which is actually for the SIM card. That's your subscriber information, what your name is, what your phone number is. All of our devices, as they travel throughout the day, are constantly broadcasting in sort of this radio orchestra. IMSI catchers masquerade as the legitimate cell phone tower. So when you're saying, hey, cell phone tower, can you hear me? Instead, a man in the middle, somebody with an IMSI catcher in the trunk of their car, in a briefcase, in their office, has it send a louder signal back to you than the cell phone tower and say, I'm the cell phone tower.
Now this sounds pretty complex. How hard is it to make or buy an IMSI?
It's incredibly easy. You buy these things off the shelf. Every police department in the United States seems to be buying these things nowadays.
Now the use of IMSI catchers by police recently caused international headlines when a newspaper in Norway attempted to track the amount of IMSI catchers in Oslo and actually found so many that they questioned if their tracker was working properly. After hiring a cybersecurity firm, They discovered that not only were they indeed correct, but that these devices were actually being used to spy on their own government facilities. Now, this technology is being used by police forces all over the world. In fact, in New York City alone, IMSI catchers have been used more than 1,000 times by police since 2008. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, as they're now being used all around us, all the time.
There's a joint CIA-NSA program called, appropriately enough, Shenanigans. Shenanigans was a project to mount on airplanes an IMSI catcher and fly it around the city. They can tell when you've traveled, they can tell when you move. This all happens without warrants. Right. Shenanigans was happening in Yemen. But these programs have a disturbing frequency, a tendency to move from war front to home front. Right. And within 6 months of Shenanigans being reported, the Wall Street Journal reported that the same technology was now being used domestically inside the United States. Whenever there is a crisis, rationality exits the room, and you have a policy that is being driven by a panic in the pursuit of benefits that at the time are theoretical. They said these things would work. They said they were necessary. They said they would be beneficial. We don't want to do them, but the threat is so great that this is the only way that we can really counter them. When we see emergency measures passed, particularly today, they tend to be sticky. The emergency tends to be expanded, then the authorities become comfortable, they start to like it, and the original emergency passes. Virus is gone, is no longer a big thing. They find new applications, new uses for this new power they gained, and they went, well, maybe we don't need to give this up. Maybe we can pass a new law that makes this permanent authority. And we've seen this happen in country after country. It's not a local, domestic issue. And what people are missing, that I think people who are looking at this from a longer span are catching, is the virus is a serious problem, but it is a transient problem. We will eventually have a vaccine, or even if we don't, we will eventually have herd immunity. In 2 years, this problem will be gone. But the consequences of the decision that we make now are permanent. What we have is a transition from government that's looking at us from the outside in mass surveillance. They used to be looking at your phone, right, and they wanted to know what you were clicking on, right? They want to know what you were reading, what you're buying, this kind of associated information. But now when we get into this health context, they want to know, are you ill? They want to know your physical state. They want to know what's happening under your skin. If we permit to say, look, we can track every cell phone of every person everywhere all the time. We can make inferences on the basis of this data set, and then we can take executive actions as a result of this information. What keeps them from going, well, we're worried about health. We're worried about public health. We're worried about protecting people. The primary symptom of the virus is a fever, right? This develops before the cough and persists throughout the course of the virus, your immune system fighting it off. We're going to send an order to every fitness tracker that can get something like pulse or heart rate. And we're going to start demanding access to this kind of activity. And now we're going to go, well, these people have elevated pulses. And now, 5 years later, the virus is gone. This data is still available to them. They start looking for new things. They already know what you're looking at on the internet, right? They already know where your phone is moving. Now they know what your heart rate is, your pulse is. What happens when they start to intermix these and apply artificial intelligence to it? And Harari asks, if you have this bracelet that tracks your temperature and your pulse, and they know you're watching a video, or you're just watching a speech from and they see you get angry, right? Because emotions really are biological processes. These are products that have measurable states associated with them by sensors. And they go, well, this person doesn't like what's being said. It's one thing if an advertiser does this, it's still chilling, it's still dangerous, or a bank does it, or it happens in a job interview. But what happens when you have built, over the course of a generation, the architecture of we are moving closer and closer to that world every day that we let panic motivate our decisions rather than rational reflection regarding inevitable consequences.